So, I almost forgot to add the tubing directly above the seats to finish the very top of the frame. So I quickly added this. Now I was trying to figure out the best way to do this. Originally I was kind of thinking of doing it very similar to how I did for the mini trophy truck project, where I just have tubing starting from here, tapering to a point towards the front, but that's not that strong, and I just decided to do this. This is technically the strongest way to do this. This is technically true cross bracing. Now, I also added some more cross bracing directly above the rear differential to strengthen that up a little bit more. So now this frame is finally at the point where we can now strip this whole thing down, take it all apart, and finish all the welding on the frame. Now, first thing we need to do is remove the engine. I tried to make it to where we can simply just unbolt it from the frame and pick it up with the chain hoist. Could that be any louder? Now, before I take apart the rear suspension, I want to add a little bit more tubing to the trailing arms to try and strengthen this up a bit more. Now, obviously, the strongest way to do this would be to add a piece of tubing right here underneath where the shock is mounted. Down here, that would be the strongest way, but obviously we can't do that. That's where the brake caliper is mounted. But I can add this tubing right here I had to make it to where the bottom is offset by a lot on this piece of tubing to make it to where the parking brake cable can still fit and everything. I may also add another piece of tubing going from here down to here or something, as well as add some gussets over here to try and just strengthen this up a bit more. So I cut out some gussets for these corners as well as the corners over here, but I'm gonna wait to tack these in place until the rear suspension's all taken apart, because I want to make sure that these are in center and everything. It's a little hard to do that with it assembled, so I'll disassemble the rear suspension and then tack these in place. Alright, that wasn't too bad to completely disassemble this thing. Now tomorrow I will start to weld this whole thing together. It's probably going to take me many hours of welding, but I don't know. Comment below how many hours you think it's going to take me to weld this whole thing, to weld the frame as well as all the suspension components. I will time how long it takes me. I'm not going to say how long it's going to take, but I will pin the comment that is correct. finally got the frame all welded together. Next, we need to do all of the suspension components. So, all the welding is now finally finished. The frame is done, all the suspension components are done, spindles, everything that needs welding, except for the doors. I didn't weld the doors yet. We'll do that once we do the latching mechanism and everything, as well as we also need to do the hinges. I didn't really weld those. I wanted to TIG weld those, but that's something we can do later on. So, now, how many hours do you think it took to completely weld everything? Mind you, I only had the timer running when I was actually welding or when I was cleaning up the welds, like cleaning up all the spatter everywhere, as well as I took a wire wheel to this whole thing to clean up all the welds. So I only had the timer running for that, but comment below how many hours you think it took me to do all that. And I will pin the comment that is either correct or closest to being correct. I'm not sure if you guys are going to get down to... I'm not going to go by seconds. It's just hours and minutes. So the closest comment, I will pin that comment as correct. So now, it seems like every time I get to this point with a project, I get questions from you guys wondering, why don't I paint the frame now? It's already all disassembled. It's all clean and everything. And I did say that the frame is finished, which is true. The frame is finished, but I'm not finished with all the welding. There's probably a million tabs that I have to add everywhere for all the paneling that I want to add. I have to figure out how to do mounts for the electrical system. There's still a lot more welding I actually need to do to the frame, so I'm not done with welding on the frame, but the frame is finished as far as building the frame. But I still need to add a bunch of things here and there. So I'm not going to paint the frame now. I prefer to do that once the project is completely finished. So anyway, let's obviously start working on reassembly. First, let's work on getting the suspension reinstalled. I grabbed the wrong one. Give me a minute. Of course, now it doesn't fit. Alright, give me a minute. Now, I did want to, as I'm reassembling this project, I did want to kind of finish this differential, or at least get it to the point where it's ready to, once we get the engine running in the future, it's ready to be taken on its first test drive. There's a couple things we need to do to this. We need to install the proper hardware. It's missing a couple bolts. I need to install a lot of the nuts that I'm using aren't the nylon locking nuts that I normally use for projects like these, as well as we need to install a vent hole in one of the bearing carriers so this thing can vent properly. We need to fill it full of oil. I forgot to buy the proper oil that this differential needs, and we need to find the C-clips that hold this in place into the differential. These, I think those are called half shafts. These have a little tiny C-clip, or whatever it's called, on the end of the splines that hold this in place in the differential. These that I bought on eBay did not come with those. I was kind of hoping to, you know, I do have a couple off of some old CV axles that I have. I was kind of hoping that some of those may fit on here. Unfortunately, they don't. So I have to go back on eBay and see if I can find those proper parts that I need. So until I can find those C-clips, we kind of just, you know, can't really do that stuff yet to this differential. So let's just slap this thing back together, get the rear suspension reinstalled, and just know that sometime in the future, once I do get the proper C-clips, we will have to take this back apart again to install it and do those couple of things to technically finish this differential and get it to the point where it's ready to, once we get the engine running, we can take it on its first test drive and it's finished and filled with oil and all that stuff. But for now, let's just slap this thing back together. Well, didn't really think about this when I installed this plate right here. Now I can't get the bolt into the hole for the brake caliper on the rear. So either I can just cut the bolt a little bit shorter or possibly drill a hole through this. Let me see if I can just cut the bolt a bit shorter. Yeah, I ended up just cutting the bolt a little bit shorter. It's still the same amount of threads in the brake caliper, so it shouldn't matter. Alright, let's get the engine reinstalled. The most annoying thing ever is when a little piece of spatter gets in the hole, making it to where now the bolt doesn't want to fit. There we go. So, looking at this, it looks exactly the same as it did at the beginning of this video, but the frame is finished, it's all welded together, it just doesn't really look like we got much done. Now, I'm actually going to put this project to the side for a little bit because I've been working on this for kind of a long time and I kind of want to take a little break from this, and there's a bunch of other projects that I kind of want to, I'm in the middle of a bunch of projects and I want to resume working on the Baja Bug and the Mini Lifted Muscle Car projects. Now, once we get back to work on this project, now that the frame is all done and finished, we can start working on paneling, we got to finish the differential, we got to hook up the brakes, hook up the throttle, hook up the clutch, and then we can start working on wiring to try and get this engine to fire up for the first time. But I guess that's it for this video. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see ya in the next video.